Welcome to the Cabin Culture Podcast, where we spend a little more time diving deeper into all the fun parts of cabin culture. We like to think of this as both the material and imagined expressions of how cabin lovers, dwellers, builders, and designers wish to live a more simple and authentic life. On this episode, we're talking to Yani Brannley, the innovative mind behind Serenitree Stays. With a nod to North Carolina's lush landscapes, of which I'm a bit partial, Serenitree Stays offers a distinctive twist on traditional cabin experiences, blending the tranquility of the woods with thoughtful hospitality. Yani and her husband started with just one cabin and have since expanded to 3, each with its own story and charm. Today, she shares her journey from not having a cabin culture background, growing up in the tropical settings of Cuba and then urban Miami, to creating a thriving cabin rental business. She discusses the transformative impact of the pandemic on her life and how a spontaneous trip to Asheville led her to discover and fall in love with the calm and healing nature of cabin life. Stay tuned as we explore how she transitions from a beachgoer to a cabin owner, the challenges and rewards of renovating cabins, and how she infuses her properties with exceptional care and hospitality that makes guests feel deeply cared for and welcomed. Whether you're a cabin owner, aspiring host, or someone who cherishes the peaceful embrace of nature, this episode promises insights and inspiration on embracing and sharing the cabin lifestyle. Let's do it. Okay, why don't you go ahead and start by introducing yourself for us, your name and your cabin/cabins.
Yes, so my name is Yani Brannley, and we have our company name is Serenitree Stays. So technically like serenity, but we're in North Carolina, so it's trees. So it's Serenitree Stays. And right now we currently have 3 cabins, but we started with 1. And we are actually, where I'm at right now is actually the last cabin that we were working on that will soon be on Airbnb. So this has been a couple months of rehab and a lot of work.
Yes, well, that you have been rehabbing. We'll get there in a second. I want to go back to the first one first, though, because you did not, unlike a lot of folks that we talk to, they grew up with cabin culture, cabins in the families or traveling to cabins with folks. And that is not the case for you. So you share a little bit about your childhood and then at what point cabin culture was first introduced to you?
Yeah, so I'm Cuban, so I was not born in the mountains. I was born like in the beach, tropical, going out. So that was my childhood. I was actually born and raised in Cuba. I came to this country when I was 11. So cabin culture was never, beach culture was, but not cabin culture. And we moved to Miami. So even in South Florida, we don't really have cabins and stuff like that. And my parents were never the type of people that even knew about cabins and the mountains. I think that the first time I ever went to a cabin was already when I was older, that we went to Gatlinburg, Tennessee. Yeah. I feel like that's where everyone goes when you're from South Florida.
Yep.
And that was my first experience with a cabin. But then again, it wasn't, to be honest, it wasn't really like something that it was something that grew into me right away. You know, it was kind of like a family vacation. Everyone was there. I never truly enjoyed what a cabin culture meant because there were so many people around that everybody was just like, get up early, let's do stuff, let's go here, let's go there, you know?
Yeah.
So it wasn't until COVID actually that the lockdowns and we couldn't travel, we couldn't go anywhere, right? So Nelson actually got COVID-19 and he actually got really sick.
When did he get COVID in the span of the pandemic?
Okay, so in 2020 we were really taking care of ourselves. So it wasn't until 2021 that he got COVID, and it was around summer of 2021.
Yeah.
And I think he got Delta because that was one of the worst ones. Yeah, and he got really sick for 10 days straight. That kid, his fever, I couldn't bring it down. And then he actually started suffering from depression and anxiety during that was one of his symptoms.
Isn't that one of the symptoms of, yeah.
Yes. So I don't know how, but he ended up getting very, very like depressed and a lot of anxiety, which if you know Nelson, he is not like that. That's something that I would like go through as a girl, but he's always like super positive and everything. So we started like pretty much taking daily walks outside to help him, you know what I mean, with his anxiety, try to get him outside of the house. And it was just this one time in the morning that we were doing our daily walk that I literally looked at him and I was like, oh man, how much nicer it would be if we would just be walking or hiking in the mountains instead of like, our street, our home street.
Yeah.
And he was like, let's do it. Let's go. And I was like, you serious? He's like, yeah. So we got our dogs in the car that same day. We didn't even have a cabin. We didn't know where we were going. We just got on I-95, started driving north. We thought that we were going to end up in Blue Ridge, Georgia,
Yep.
but we had already been there before. So we were like, oh, let's go to Asheville. We've never been to Asheville.
Yeah.
And we ended up in Asheville in this beautiful, most coziest cabin I have ever seen in my life. But it was just me and Nelson. And he was still kind of like recovering from COVID. So we weren't really doing much other than like bunking down in the cabin and being like lazy. And that was what I first experienced, like what it feels like to be in a cabin and not do anything, slow living, pretty much just like relax, not think about anything in life and enjoy the birds, nature. And after that trip, we literally came back to North Carolina the month after looking for our own cabin. It was crazy.
I was going to ask, at what point during that trip, was it like the first day you were like, this is what it should be like, we should look for our own? Or was it at like the end of the trip that you're like, maybe this is something we should do?
So for me, it was actually a lot of the details in the cabin that the host was having, like that provided for us. Like I know this is like TMI, but whether it's like, stuff for like your menstrual period or things like needs that you would never think that could happen. And I am here in the middle of the night and I'm having these needs and I realize that this host is providing all of this for us. And I was like, you imagine if you're in the middle of the mountains and you have to like all of a sudden everything's closed, what do you do? So for me that's when I first experienced hospitality and that's what hospitality meant to me. Like
That's
when
such a good description, like literally predicting your needs.
Yes, absolutely. Because a lot of people just think about towels or like coffee or stuff like that. But then I was like, man, I really, really want to experience this for myself. Like I loved how I felt. And I felt like I really want to provide the same feeling to other people.
Yeah.
So I think that host was really the one person that made me want to be a host.
That's really interesting because I thought your takeaway would be we want a place for us to relax at. But your takeaway was actually I want to do the work to create the same experience for someone else, which is a very different
Yes.
takeaway, I feel like.
Yes. So Nelson really wanted to, he's like the numbers guy. I'm not. I'm more like the designer and the one that kind of tries to create the feeling and the environment stuff. But he was more the one that like, okay, so let's go back to North Carolina and buy a cabin. Obviously for us to enjoy, but to Airbnb it as well. So, like there's systems like Airbnb and stuff like that. So we didn't really know that we were gonna have like three cabins at the beginning or that we were gonna open Serenitree Stays or that it was going to be this like big deal where we felt like, oh my god, we are actually covering our bills, we are actually profitable, and we can duplicate this over and over again. And being a long distance from South Florida managing, I didn't want to grow too fast because I felt like I never had a management company before and I never hired one from the beginning. I just
Yeah.
literally felt like maybe I can do this. My background is in
Makes
banking.
sense. I was going to say
Yes.
it also makes sense because what drew you to it was the desire to do the hosting. It wasn't like
Yes.
a monetary growth thing or like initially. And so it makes sense that you would want to do the hosting.
Yes, definitely wanted to do the hosting. Definitely saw the impact that nature. By the way, my husband's not a nature person. Well, he didn't used to be prior to COVID. Actually, we took a road trip to Sedona, Arizona, and he was like, "We're just looking at rocks and more rocks." And I was like, "We're looking at nature." By the way, happy Earth Day. So after COVID, he changed his perspective and he started realizing how the impact of healing that nature has on our well-being, our because a lot of the stress is environmental too. So coming from a big city, I feel like we're all humans. We all have issues. We all have family problems, health issues and stuff. But when you're in this like huge, big cities, there's also environmental stress that
Mhm.
comes into play. But when we get to spend some time in the cabin, the feeling that we get when we're here is so much more calm and serenity, which is like my favorite word,
Yeah.
that I can go back to my real life, right? And just have a clear mind, more like I feel like I'm even a nicer person when I go back to Miami. All my family and
Yeah.
friends like, oh, you can't tell Yani came back. She's being so kind and sweet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's just what the mountains do, you know?
I agree, especially the Blue Ridge Mountains. There is truly, truly something special there. Let me ask a question because this didn't seem like you hadn't planned this out for years to make this purchase. You went to the mountains and literally started looking right away. How did you know? And you don't have to give me exact numbers, but how did you know financially that like this was an investment we can kind of jump into and feel confident that it will make sense for us? I'm thinking specifically about our guests who might feel intimidated by that choice and want to build or buy a cabin but aren't sure if they're ready. How did you know?
Well, for us, we actually bought it at the perfect time. We bought when the interest rate were at 2.7. So actually, our Candler cabin, and that makes a huge difference on your mortgage and affordability and like your cash flow as well.
Mm-hmm.
So when it came to the first cabin, we were able to get a lower interest rate that really helped us. But Nelson has this business mentality that I am more like scared, conservative, be careful. Are we really going to pay our bills? Is it going to pay itself? But Nelson has this huge like vision in life. And when he saw the cabin and he saw the potential of it, and obviously he went and he did his number. Like we use templates like our DNA.
Yeah.
And yeah, so obviously do your homework for sure. But we also felt like it was such a safe investment as well because, for example, during the pandemic, right? Maybe you couldn't take a flight to Mexico or to the Bahamas, but you can get in your car and drive to a regional area and have a vacation. And at the end of the day, as humans, we all need to do like little getaways, whether it's to the beach, the mountains. So we were very confident about the area that we were investing. You know, in my opinion, the Blue Ridge Mountains, the Smoky Mountains, it's kind of like it's been proven, you know. Something really important too is the regulations in the area. Could they potentially change? That's why we never wanted to invest like in a big city where you have all these major hotels, you know, pretty much
Right.
they have money to bury you, you know.
Yeah. It
And
is
having in the
different
mountain.
than, yeah, in the rural areas, it feels different because tourism is so much a part of the economy that if they regulate it, I mean, maybe this is my own wishful thinking, but if they regulate it too much, then you're stopping people from coming to stay because a lot of these cabins are bringing people to the area.
Yes, correct. Bryson City, where we have Moonstruck, which is one of our latest cabin as well. There's not many major hotels, so if you go to that area, you're pretty much looking to stay at a log cabin or a tiny house or a tree house. So the actual, and that was also something really important to us: the impact on the community, the impact on the neighbors. That's why I did not want to invest in a place where I was going to make the community worse. You know what I mean? That's not what we were trying to do. So we were trying to create a business out of it, of course, but at the same time, kind of like be mindful of like real estate prices and all of this stuff, you know? So we kind of did not want to get into into any other market because of that. Because I know
Yeah.
what people go through in the cities to afford like affordable housing, you know? So we
Yep.
were like, no.
Yep. Can I ask another question about that? Because I feel like 2020 and 2021 was this unique period of time where people had, in a lot of cases, more disposable income because they weren't spending it on all the things we normally do, like going out to eat and going to concerts and things like that. And so more people began to invest specifically in cabins because we were also running from cities.
Right.
And I've heard from a lot of folks, and I own a cabin in the Blue Ridge Mountains as well. And I bought mine in 2016. So I watched like what happened in 2020, and it was crazy
Yes.
spike in
Yes.
and needs. But then on the backside, when the world opened back up and all of these people had bought cabins, it's had quite an impact in terms of saturation and ability to hit the occupancy rates that you want. What have you found on that front, and what have you done about it?
Well, definitely 2020. The first cabin we listed it around July of 2022. So I didn't, because I spent the first 8 months fixing that cabin and making it like fun and stuff. So it was our first time. Remember, we're from South Florida, so it's not like I had a lot of time, even though we moved in. Like that's another thing we do. We move into the area. But I really didn't experience the 2020 and 2021 boom when it comes to Airbnb. So by the time that I put my cabin up for on Airbnb, the world was technically already almost open, you know, like things, people started traveling. So I never really experienced a huge boost. But what I can tell you is that I have noticed a decline in occupancy rate from 2022 to 2023. So especially the winter time. Our this winter time here in Candler was really, really slow. You know, I almost like cried. I'm like, what's going on? You know, but then March comes. But I think that what really helps is one, the reviews on Airbnb. I feel like that really helps you boost, you know, the algorithm and help you. Also the way that you curate your houses and like the decoration, the amenities, and like if people actually find themselves going to your cabin in the area as well. So for me, that's what's helped me, but we did see a decline in bookings for sure. I feel like unless you have one of those Instagram pages that you get all your booking from Instagram, Airbnb was a little bit slower. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, agreed. Because I notice I have such a difference in our 3 cabins. One of them I do market, as you know, a lot on Instagram, and it's always fully booked. But the other 2, I don't. I just don't have the bandwidth to do it for multiple cabins. And so I feel like I get a really good gauge on like what the Airbnb market is looking like from specifically the one in Boone, because I've had it for 7 or 8 years. So I've been able to study the trends and what it's looking like. And it's definitely been slower. And we have at this point 400 some good reviews, but it's still, I feel like I'm constantly having to lower our prices if we want to hit the same occupancy that we had years ago. Question for you, because I think it's interesting what you say about how you decorate your cabin. And I think that's totally true. And I think it's about understanding the cultural vibes of that area too. Like, yes, nice relative, you want it to be nice, but then also understanding when people go to the mountains of North Carolina, what do they want to feel? Because you described your first cabin adventure as the coziest cabin you've ever experienced. Take us back to what were some of the things that made it feel so cozy for you? Do you remember what the cabin was?
Yes, it's actually in Brevard. I don't know if I said that right.
Yeah, Brevard.
Okay, awesome. There you go. That's where we first stayed. Just like this one, log cabin, log on the outside, log on the inside, you know, wood tones. A lot of blankets, a wood stove, a loft. Beautiful mountain views, which is actually funny because my first cabin did not have mountain views. We have to create them. But when we got Whispering Pines Haven in Candler, that cabin it has drywall actually. So the wood is only on the floor and the ceiling, and then the walls are all drywall.
Yeah.
But remember, I was actually being outbid by everyone back then because everyone was doing the same thing. And every time I would put an offer in a cabin, we wouldn't get it. So the only one that actually accepted our offer was this one. And we kind of worked with the place. We're like, okay, so this doesn't have wood everywhere, but we can make it cozy our own way. So we decided to go with this more like bohemian decoration for it instead of log cabin, because I felt like that's what the home was telling me to do with it. You know what I mean? And at that time, that little boho style was very in, and everyone I feel like was doing it, but it's so cute and it is so calming, you know? So that's pretty much what I did with that first cabin when I first decorated it. Each of our cabins all look different.
Okay, so that's interesting in terms of inspiration for each of the cabins. Where did you find the inspiration for each that was different from one another?
So the first one was, like I said, it was the drywall that I couldn't really make it as super cozy because it felt almost like a home instead of a cabin, even though in the outside it's a log cabin, just not inside. So that's how I got the inspiration to decorate that cabin a little bohemian through Pinterest. And I also, that was what was trending back in 2021. And we felt like, hey, I feel like this environment, this little place can actually feel like it's not out of place if we decorate like that, you know.
Yep.
For example, this log cabin, I wouldn't really do bohemian because it's kind of like, I don't know, like, you know what I mean? I feel like it's more rustic.
Yeah.
And then the other cabin that we got, the one in Bryson City, that one actually was completely furnished already. So we didn't really have to do much other than change the decorations of it, like the little stuff
like all the furniture, like all the furniture was good.
It was high quality, first of all. So it was actually really, really good, high quality furniture in that cabin. And there was just some stuff I didn't like, but okay, so I did change something that was big with the furniture. They didn't have a sleeper sofa, so I switched their other sofa to a sleeper sofa because I did wanted a sleeper sofa on that cabin. But I really didn't change much about that one. All I did was change decoration, and it's funny how it's the little things. If I show you pictures how bad they had it and pictures after, it's the little stuff that you create that adds the mood. And sometimes people think it's the furniture, you have to spend a lot of money on it. And I'm like, not really. Sometimes it's not the furniture, it's the carpet, it's the rug, it's, you know what I mean? It's the curtains. I don't know.
Can you give an example from that cabin of one of the small things that you swapped out that made a really big difference? I'm looking at pictures of it now as we talk. You're talking about Moonstruck right now, right?
Yes. So Moonstruck, the bed and everything was the same. For example, we changed the bedding because the bedding they had was those like really dark bare cabin like bedding that I don't like. So we went to Target and we got something a little bit more contemporary, like the pillows, you know. We also bought pillows for the sofas, like also in Target. We bought stuff to decorate. We put some greenery. It didn't have any plants, so we added plants, which I feel gives it a little bit. We added plants. Everything was.
Are they real plants or fake plants?
In this cabin, Moonstruck, they're not real. No, they're not real.
I always wonder how people do that when they have real plants there, how they maintain that. Especially, you live so far away.
Well, I actually do have real plants in Candler, the big cabin. But my cleaners there, they do a really good job at taking care of those plants because I found a cleaner that actually loves plants. So
there you go.
She bathes them.
You need to make it happen.
Yes. Yeah, but I don't expect every cleaner to take care of my plants. They have a lot to do, honestly. So yeah.
And then tell us about the third one. This one is about to launch, but hasn't launched yet. So the original is Whispering Pines, and then came Moonstruck second. And then what is the third one?
Actually, no. This one that we're fixing came second. The only thing is that we were renting it long term. So we bought this cabin and we were not renting it for Airbnb. So for a whole year, there was a family living in this cabin. And then eventually they bought their own house in North Carolina. So now I had to either decide to sell it or to put it on Airbnb. So this cabin, we've been fixing it for another 6 months. But this one was actually, in my opinion, one of the biggest rehab. The deck we had to redo from scratch. We had to create a whole entire landscaping outside. The fire pit, we had to create it from scratch. Like everything was like really beat up. And not guest ready, not something that people would want to pay for. You know, we have to rehab the kitchen. We did a whole kitchen rehab. We did a whole bathroom rehab. So in this specific one, it's been a lot of work, but a lot of structural work too, because the deck, like if you would go out there, like you could fall off, it would be bad. So that's why it took us so long too, you know, because we had to do real structural work.
And so furnish is the least sexy, least rewarding, most expensive work I feel like you can do. That is always my number one piece of advice to anyone looking for a cabin is don't get a structural engineer to come in when you're doing inspections, because that's going to be the work that eats up so much of your budget, and it's so not rewarding. If it's done well, it's getting you back to where you thought it was to begin with.
Yeah. What happened to us is that this cabin, we never really meant it to put it up on Airbnb. So we bought it and we thought that we were just going to rent it long term, and it did. But then eventually Nelson was like, okay, either we sell it or we try Airbnb. So we did our numbers and we brought everything from South Florida, like the cabinets. We got it cheaper over there. And obviously and honestly, friends, I think that the only thing that we paid someone to do that was not us was the countertop for the kitchen.
That's what
Because
I
we
was
don't know
going
how
to
to do
ask, is what
countertop.
your rehab was like. Like, were you the general contractor? Did you manage everything? Were you living there when it was happening?
Yes, I lived during the whole mess. I live under, it's really bad. I live under all the dust and everything. And I'm asthmatic, so I don't even know how I get to do all of this. But what we do is that we've been lucky enough since, like I said, we moved to the areas that we are doing the cabin or rehabbing these cabins, and we get to meet like the neighbors. We get to ask people, and everybody that has ever worked for us has been either friends that have actually have come from Miami to help us, or people that we met here in North Carolina locally. Like I have never hired a GC or anything like that. Other than for like electrical work, I do hire an electrician, a plumber. I do hire a plumber.
Yeah.
To do our outdoor deck, I hire a company that does decks. We don't do that. You're crazy. But for example, to do the cabinets, to do the kitchen, the shelves, to do the bathroom, we all hire local people. We're like, hey, I got the tile. Do you know how to install tile? And pretty much that we have, because we save money like that. It's an investment.
Totally.
And honestly, yeah. And the most expensive part in any of those rehab is labor, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So what would you say to someone who's like, okay, yeah, I want to save money and do it that way, but it feels very intimidating to be your own general
Yes.
contractor? What advice would you offer for someone who's like, maybe I can do this, but I'm not quite sure?
It depends where you're going to buy your first property. If it's near your house, I think like you can definitely do it. Especially with YouTube. I mean, I'm not trying to advertise YouTube as a place, but you can get really good information on YouTube. I'm like seriously of how to do something. Um, but I would say that if you're doing it like us, like long distance, move there. Like you need to be able to like meet local people. And I mean, North Carolina, I also brag about how nice people are. You go to Lowe's or Home Depot, everyone's willing to help you.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I got lucky that everyone here is just so like amazing and they truly want to help you. And if they can, they know someone that could.
Yeah.
So that we found all of our contractors and all our people like that with like our electrician. She gave me the plumber information. The plumber gave me where to buy the countertop. And they're all like, oh, but even like our electrician told us once, you know that you can do this yourself. You don't have to hire a management company. I have a really good cleaner that can help you. And I'm like, wow. So yeah,
So you
definitely
felt
like,
really empowered by the people that you were meeting by living there. Was that the
yeah,
obvious
by
choice for
living
you? You knew like when you bought it, you're like, great, this gives us a reason to go to the mountains for a little bit.
Yes, for a little bit, for a long time. I've been here sometimes like a month at a time, and I only go to Miami sometimes for like a week and then come back when we're rehabbing. So we don't have kids, so we literally move to North Carolina, and we become. I have friends like at restaurants, like people already know us. And when the minute we tell them, oh, we're from South Florida, but we're rehabbing and this and that, then conversations start. And they're like, oh, I know my friend does this and my friend does that. And you just start getting quote. And it's hard, but it's not impossible. And if you have the ability to, you know, work remotely or something, it's rewarding at the end. I would say at the end, not while you're going through it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I
yeah.
also think it gives you the advantage of like being on site allows it feels like I have done both. I have managed things when I lived right next door. My first rehab was like I literally bought the house next door. So I could pop over every single
Right.
day after work. I would pop over after the crew was gone and just see what had been done and catch things if they were done incorrectly the day that it happened so that I could immediately get it back
Yeah.
on track. And then I've managed builds from 15 miles away to all the way up, to Maine. And it is very different when you can't be there regularly. Because if you show up a month later and say, oh, this electrical is
No.
done wrong, and already the insulation and the drywall is in, like it's too late. It's
Yeah.
a very expensive change to make.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. No. In this last cabin, we actually had an issue like that with our kitchen where I don't know, I think it was the designer that designed the kitchen because we paid for the design. She didn't measure, I mean, the measurements were off. So when we brought, imagine, we bring all these cabinets from Miami. It's not like I want to take them back and say I have them wrong.
Right.
So the layout was not fitting in the kitchen. So we had to
That's a
improvise.
nightmare.
It was a
So what did
nightmare.
you
So we
do?
had so they never gave me the lazy Susan, the one that it's like in the corner.
Yeah.
And then we literally had to order that one from Miami. But still things were wrong. And then I had a huge gap, right? Like I would have to put a filler. I would say like a 12-inch gap, not like 6 or 3 inches. That what am I gonna do here? This is obviously I'm wasting space, and at this point, not even though we would go to Lowe's or Home Depot, and it wasn't the same white because it's not the same manufacturer. And I
Right.
was like, I don't want this to look bad. This is a new kitchen rehab. It's supposed to look like,
Yeah.
So Nelson had the idea of buying a wine cooler. And he's like, babe, let's just buy
Oh,
a wine cooler. It's 12-inch and we'll put it there. And now people think that we gave them an extra amenity. And I'm like, wow. But you
that
guys
is a
think
really
outside
good
the
idea
box.
because that does
Yes.
feel high end.
Yes. And honestly, we were never trying to buy a wine cooler. The expense was extra, but it was because we had no choice. We have this
Right.
12-inch gap in our kitchen now. We don't know what to do with this space. And at this point, all we can do is do a filler that looks so tacky. 12-inch filler. What is this? She's like, instead of that, let's make it
I
functional
love
and put like
this.
a wine cooler.
I love this.
Yeah.
I bet
But that's just like a little. Go ahead. Go
yeah,
ahead.
I bet everybody who's rehabbed or built a cabin has a story of something in their cabin that wasn't supposed to be there originally, but when something goes wrong, you
No.
have to figure out like, okay, what is the best possible
Yeah.
solution to this?
Absolutely. And that's just one little detail of like how many things go wrong when you're doing this stuff. And you want to do it fast too because it's an investment, you know?
Right. That's right.
So you can be like wasting time on like redoing everything all over again. You kind of have to
Yeah.
like, okay, readjust. I know I wanted this, but it's not going to be like that. So how can I make it even better actually? So now you end up spending a little bit more money, but I feel like it works out at the end, you know?
Yeah. What was your experience like as it sounds like you were leading the efforts on these because Nelson works a full-time job, correct?
No, 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 no. So Nelson, he has his own company in South Florida, which technically at this point it kind of already runs itself. But he was all the like, yeah. So he is the one that actually did all the physical. I would help him, obviously, do the
Yeah.
physical work, but him and his friends were the ones that would actually do all the physical work. I could help him trying to like find the contractors, trying to find this, trying to order this part for him. I was the designated Home Depot and Lowe's runner. I was always in Home Depot. So, but to help him, but the physical work, he would do it. Like I would help him, like standing down, like the cabin and a lot of other stuff that I could help him with. But he has a restoration company in South Florida, so he's kind of like
Okay.
already used to. Yeah, so that's what he does. He has a restoration company, but he still doesn't know how to do a kitchen, for example. He knows how to tear out stuff. He doesn't know how to put it back together. So
That's
we
right.
had to
Well,
learn
now he
that part.
does. Yeah.
Yes.
Now he does. But that makes sense in terms of like, I'm always curious about that first moment when you think about real estate investment as an option. I was talking about this with my friends at dinner the other night and how often people who invest in real estate are people whose parents invested in real estate. Because if your parents didn't and you're not familiar with it, it can feel like a very intimidating or daunting thing to invest in. Stocks are kind of, I know they're not imaginary, but they kind of feel imaginary. They're very hands off. They're very like, you just kind of watch the returns come in or whatever. I don't have a lot of stock, so I don't know a lot about this. But with real estate, it's like the minute you close on something or the minute you are under contract on something, it's like inspection, that's
Okay.
planning. There's just so much to it that I think can be really intimidating for a lot of folks. So this fills in a puzzle piece right there. I think that Nelson has a restoration company. So those daunting pieces for someone with no experience in real estate might feel a little bit less daunting to the two of you.
Yeah, and I'm also a real estate. Um, I have a real estate license in South Florida,
Okay.
so I do real estate. So I kind of know about, return on investment, cash flow, and all those terms are not completely something that I don't understand,
Yeah.
And even though our parents don't own any other than their homes, they're not real estate investors. Um, you know, Nelson pretty much has like educated himself, when it comes to investment, and he doesn't like to put like all his money on like in the stock market or crypto, all of this
Yeah.
stuff going on, right? And
Yeah.
real estate, it feels safe. As crazy as it sounds, it feels safer for us. I feel like we
Agree.
could touch it. You know what I mean? Like I feel like it's an investment that you can touch and know it's real. And the stock market for us, even though I used to work in banking, so I'm also familiar with that, but it's just something that you have to trust what other people are doing with their company,
Yes. You have so much
and it's,
control.
I know, like that's why with Airbnb, I feel like I'm in control to be a good host. Like if I lose the day of tomorrow, was because I lack or because, economy can change, obviously, and it can impact the travel industry, absolutely. But I feel like at least when I am in control, I know when to let go. I don't want other people out there letting go or like, losing my money like that. So that's what he actually is better at investment. I'm more conservative. He's the one that would do all those weird crypto stuff that I don't understand. But I'm like, no, thank you. I'm happy with real estate.
Yeah. Okay, so let me
Yeah.
ask you a real estate question. Because you mentioned early on that the first cabin you bought at the right time because your interest rates was like 2.7, which, as we both know, interest rates are not at 2.7 anymore. So,
No.
from your perspective as a real estate agent, what would you say to someone in today's market who hasn't bought their first cabin yet and still wants to, but it feels so much more daunting with interest rates that are like 6%? Do you have any advice for
Yeah.
them about when would be a good time to buy or how to approach it in today's market?
It's definitely way more difficult now. And I feel like you have to buy the deal. We're no longer at that point where the house, it still made sense because the interest rates was so low. You may not be able to buy the perfect, beautiful riverfront, front or mountain view cabin because those cabins are obviously higher priced and interest rate. It's the income right now. I don't see it. I don't really see paying full price plus high interest rate. I don't see how you're going to cash flow. So you have to get creative, whether it's to find financing. Sometimes there's some interesting people out there on Instagram and YouTube talking about financing, which all of our cabins we finance regularly, like with the bank. I'm not a fan of all those new ways of financing stuff. I'm not educated on it. All the other than private investors, I'm not really educated on all the other ways that you can finance your first property. But I would say definitely try to watch those homes that have been on the market the longest and try to see why. And I say, you know what? A low offer is better than no offer. You never know how desperate those people are,
Yeah.
So just it's gonna take a lot more homework and research. But I say that usually the homes that be on the market the oldest are pretty much people that probably can actually that happened to me. We have a house in high end and the house had been in the market for a year. And I offered them such a low offer that I thought that they would never bite. But they did. They actually counter offered me and they only wanted $10,000 more than I had offered. And we were like, what the hell just happened? But you know what? That house it's a farmhouse. That house was their grandparents that had passed. But there were like 16 people in that trust. So they just wanted to get rid of it.
That's right. And you never know the
Yes,
story.
you never know their story. And I'm not saying that you're going to take advantage of it. Obviously, they need to sell. And the house had been in the market for a year. And I told that realtor why is this house has been in the market. They can't tell you, obviously. But then I was like, okay, so this is what we're going to offer. And they were asking for like 575 and we offer like 460. I'm telling you, we offer like a lot less money.
Yeah.
I mean, like, we can't do 460. We'll do 470. And I was like, okay.
I hope it's all 100,000 more than what I was listed at. I think I'll do it.
No, it happens. Like a good deal. No, but it could, even in today's market, it could happen depending on the what that specific family is going through. You can still find good deals. It's just harder. I don't see you being able to cash flow right now at full price and high interest rate. I don't see
But
how.
then the fear is what I'm envisioning. We have one cabin that we're thinking about selling, so we are in this same place, but we're like, well, we don't want to sell now because we know that everyone's waiting to buy until interest rates go down. So if we just wait a little bit, interest rates go down, we'll have ideally a lot more buyers who are interested, which will then outbid each other and raise that price up. So the idea or hope is that on the seller side, the hope is that when interest rates go down, okay, the market's going to be flooded with buyers who've just been like twiddling their thumbs waiting for interest rates to drop, which then on the buyer side would make it really hard because everyone's going to be outbidding each other and the demand is going to be so high for folks who now have an affordable interest rate. I'm not a real estate agent though. So this is just like conversations we've had.
Yeah.
What do you see on the real estate side? Is that going to be any better when interest rates go down?
For the seller, yes. But if you're looking to buy, I feel like I said, if you find a good deal, you just can buy anything right now at full price with like high interest rate. But if you can drop the price of the property or even get better terms, you'll be able to still find good deals as a buyer. But when it comes to a seller, yes, like the interest rates being a little bit lower would definitely help you get like more for the property. But at the same time, I feel like, but what if he doesn't? Like, you don't have a crystal ball. This could be years, you know what I mean? So if you're sitting on investment that it's not making sense for you anymore, I feel like you shouldn't wait. I always, this is like what I always tell everybody. There's never the perfect time to buy or sell. It is always depending on your circumstances and where you are in life. So if you need to sell because it's overwhelming, it's no longer suiting you, it's no longer profitable, whatever reason you need to sell. And if you find the perfect property, buy. I don't care if the interest rate is at 10. If it makes sense for you, buy it. Yes, tomorrow you may have bought that property with a less interest rate, which you can refinance, by the way.
Right.
Or
that's right.
Yeah. So I feel like just do it. If you're always holding back, you're never going to make that move, you know? So it could work in your favor, actually, you know? So
yeah, this is great advice. What is your 5 to 10 year plan? Do you plan to move to the mountains of North Carolina? Will you ever practice real estate there? How many more cabins do you want? What does the future look like for you guys?
I think we don't want any more cabins for now. Honestly, I'm like done with rehabbing. I saw nothing. I need a break, and I need like at least like a 3-year break minimum. You know, I am done.
So much.
But I feel like we've been doing this. We've been in constant construction since 2021, and I am done. It's 2024. I'm like, I'm done. And people don't realize how much work it takes and how long it also takes. It takes a long time because it's not just rehabbing. It's also buying the stuff. It's actually like stocking the cabin. It's all of these Amazon boxes coming in. It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
But I do see myself
on Texas is triggering for me.
But I do see myself moving to the mountains eventually. I am just our situation with like our family right now. We're like, family for us is everything. And I wouldn't see myself living away from my mom. And then my mom is taking care of my grandfather now, so I can't move her to the mountains either. She'll move, but it has to be like at the right time, you know?
Yeah.
But for now, I get to enjoy it. And then eventually, hopefully, I always say, if I move to the mountains, I'm moving to our first cabin. That's where I'm going to live. I fell in love with that cabin, and that's going to be my house.
Yeah. Okay. So
yes, that would be my first.
That's your favorite one.
Yeah, well, because I feel like that's the one that introduced me to what cabin culture is. And even though it doesn't really look like a cabin, in the inside, outside, yes, it just, it's just like that first impression. It's like my baby.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely looks like a cabin from the outside because you can see all the log exterior. It's just drywall on the inside that is slightly less cabin-like.
Yes, slightly, correct. But yeah, I would move there.
For those who aren't looking at pictures of it right now, at least Moonstruck is log cabin, like more of that traditional. You can see wood on every wall. The cabinets are wood, like all of it is wood. That's very similar to what my cabin in Boone is like. Is
Yeah.
wood everywhere, which is beautiful. And I love it for those vibes. It also makes it very hard to photograph. Do you find that?
Mm-hmm. But yes, definitely really hard to show people what it really looks like. But that's why I had to pay for professional photography. So yeah, we found a girl here locally.
Yeah, yours definitely look better than the ones I've taken of the interior of my cabin because they're just always so orange and red, and I like
So
can't, and that's not what it feels like when you're there. So I just have really struggled to capture that one. It's probably why I don't post as much about it on Instagram. Though we did just
yeah,
hire a professional photographer, and I have yet to use any of those photos, so I need to do that as soon as possible too. So you've
yeah,
taken
and it's
these 2 or
hard.
3 years of a break, and so this might be it for you, the 3 cabins that you have.
Mm-hmm. I want to. I want to take a break.
But it's
I'm
kind of nice.
done.
It sounds like it's given you the flexibility to be able to prioritize your family, though, in doing this, providing additional income, but then you can go back and forth between Florida and the mountains.
Yeah, and not only that, I get to, I'm lucky enough to be able to bring them to, and take them to the mountains. So if it's not me going back down there to see them, I'm always bringing them up. And it's just like I said, we are Cubans, so for us, cabins culture is not something that they're used to. So when I get to bring them, they're like, "Oh, this is so nice and relaxing, and the mountains and nature." And even though they do kind of feel the same way with the beach, the ocean, because it has the same relaxing, I honestly feel that not like the trees and the waterfalls and the mountains just have like it is so different, so different. Like
Yeah.
I like the ocean and it relaxes me temporarily when I'm there, but I feel like it doesn't have a long lasting effect like the
Yeah.
mountains still.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
have now grown from one to getting ready to launch your third cabin. And that is a very different hosting experience when you're hosting at only one cabin versus hosting at two versus hosting at three. What have you had to change and what tools have you started to use as you've grown from one to two and now getting ready for three?
So definitely platforms like property management software have
Yep.
helped me a lot. We
Which one do
use
you use?
Hostfully.
Okay.
Hostfully. I really like them. Their customer service is great. Yeah, so systems help me a lot. Like with the automation of messages help me because we have now a lot more guests writing to you or letting you know stuff.
Yep.
And so Hostfully has helped me a lot with automating some messages because I still like to follow up, as a human and have
Yep.
that human interaction with them. But it's not like, oh my God, at 10 o'clock in the morning on check-in day, I forgot to send in the door code. I know that it's gonna be sent no matter what. And that is
Yes.
why I use those systems for. Price Labs has also helped me because obviously we're in different like our cabins have are in different locations. Like one is in Candler, the other one is in Bryson City, and now this one is in Weaverville. So the market's different. So how do you price all these properties?
Yes.
I'm not an expert. I don't know. One sleeps two, the other one sleeps five, the other one
Right.
sleeps 10. So how do you manage the pricing for all of them? Price Lab.
Does it automatically update for you if you have a vacancy coming up? Will it automatically adjust those prices for you, or do you have to prompt it to do that?
So they have like rule sets that you set up at the beginning. And it could automate everything for you, or you can actually go in and do a discount last minute if you want as well, kind of like Airbnb.
Yep.
But I figured out the rule sets of like if it's a week away and it's not booked, if it's 3 days away and it's not booked, like to drop the prices, That's why sometimes you'll see like my Tuesday or Monday at like 100 and something dollars, but then my weekends are like almost 300,
Yeah.
That's because it's really hard for me to book a Monday or a Tuesday, so it does it for you.
Right. And it's better than nothing. If you're going to make a couple $100s off of it, it's better than having it sit empty. I mean, it depends on your priorities and it depends on a lot of things, but potentially better to make that money than let it sit empty.
What I've noticed is that people go like, "Oh, I can stay one more night instead of leaving Sunday. I can stay until Tuesday for like only $100." Okay, and like it helps you also extend the stay instead of being like a 3 night stay. Now you make it like, "Oh, if you stay one more night," and I actually let them know. when they're booking, or if I know that I don't have a guest checking in on Monday, like let's say that the guest leaves on Sunday, by Saturday I'm already letting them know, hey, if you would like to extend your stay, I can give you a discount, la la la. And then it helps sometimes if their schedule is flexible. Sometimes it doesn't. But I've gotten like a few bookings where people be like, oh, an extra night would be awesome. And I give it to them at such a low rate, you know?
Right. Right. If they have the flexibility, why not?
Yeah.
Any other tools? You mentioned Hostfully and you mentioned Price Labs. Are there any other ones that you use?
Not really. I only use those two. I tried to use one of those softwares that you use to manage like your cleaners and stuff.
Yep.
But I felt like it was too many softwares. I was like, I can't deal with all this computer and robot stuff either. All this stuff. Like sometimes, so my cleaners, the scheduling of ordering stuff for the cabin, restocking, all of that is just communication between me and my cleaners. If something breaks, it's just communication. So I don't use any other software when it comes to managing the actual property itself. It's just human interaction between me and my cleaners, which I like it that way.
Yeah,
You know,
I do too.
I don't want to. Yeah.
Do you have any advice for folks in finding a good cleaner? Because it sounds like your cleaners are really great, and that is such an important part of hosting remotely. Do you have any advice on how you found good cleaners or trained good cleaners?
So it's funny because I've never hired a cleaner in my life. I've never gone into one of these websites like Turno or something to find a cleaner. The first cleaner that I had, which amazing, she stayed with us for like a long time. She actually came from Miami, so she moved to North Carolina. And yes, she moved, and it so happened that she ended up like being our cleaner, while she was up here. So again, like I'm telling you, for us, it's about network and people. Like for me, I believe in that. I believe in networking, or like bringing people you already know, you already trust to help you grow your business.
Yep.
So in the one in Moonstruck was actually our plumber, that we were having plumbing issues in that cabin at the beginning when we first like moved in to start setting it up. And he's the one that told me, are you going to manage it yourself? And I was like, yeah, I'm going to manage it myself. And he's like, well, I have a really good cleaner that can help you.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, sure, give me her information. So I reached out to her, and I scheduled like to meet. And I was like, this is it. This is, you're going to clean this place. This is what I want. But I didn't even have to train her because that's what she does
she already
professionally. Yeah. But she's just so, it was just her personality. Everything about her was just like perfect fit. And I was like, I just want to make you happy. And I want you to be happy. So she even gave me like a quote. Okay, this is how much I'm going to charge you for cleaning your cabin. I'm like, I'm going to pay you more. Yeah. Even if it's just $20 more, I'm going to pay you more because I want you.
Totally worth
yes.
Good cleaner, especially when Yep.
Yeah, I was like, is that your price? Well, no, I'm going to pay you more because I want you to like love me. I want you to take care of my cabin like it's your own.
Yeah.
So that's what helped me.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I said that's what helped me, just like finding people locally by word of mouth and recommendation.
Yeah. Yep. This was so great. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me.
Oh, thank you, Janice. It was nice chatting with you too. We finally get to do this.
Thanks so much for joining us. And if you liked what you heard, feel free to leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify or share some of your favorite parts over on Apple Podcast. If you have feedback or suggestions for the future, you can also find me on Instagram at Cozy Rock Cabin. Looking forward to next week.